Hi, everybody, and welcome to Cider Week Finger Lakes 2020. We are heading into our final weekend. It has been a phenomenal week of both online virtual programming and in-person events where we could stay safe and socially distanced. There's been some phenomenal events. I invite you to check all of our programming that's happened so far online over at our New York Cider Association TV channel on YouTube. Many of you are watching from there now. And you can also check out our ciderweekflx.com site for a full listing of events that are coming up this weekend. But it is my pleasure at this point to welcome this panel called Ciders of Place. And I'm going to welcome our panelists. We have a phenomenal group here today. So we have Autumn Stoshek from Eve's Cidery, that's in Interlaken, New York. Just south of Ithaca. And then we have Eric Schatt from Redbird Orchard Cidery from Burdett, New York, right between Ithaca and Watkins Glen here in the Finger Lakes. And then we have Adrian Preto, who is Wino Dino, I believe, on Instagram, right?
Correct, yeah.
So Adrian, I'm gonna do a little bio because you have a really awesome intro. Freelance wine writer and wine consultant, winery consultant based right here in the Finger Lakes. Lives with your wife and daughter and a multitude of pets, which sounds awesome. And you write for various publications as well. And you're currently consulting on the development of 2 wineries, both in New York and one in Texas even, which sounds incredibly interesting.
Hopefully it works out. Yeah.
Excellent. Very nice. So Autumn and Eric, I think this was kind of your idea, right? To put together a conversation around ciders of place, meaning sort of terroir, and to do some tasting with Adrian and really talk about the cider in the context of terroir, which is a phenomenal, topic to be layering into the conversation around cider.
Yeah. So, Eric and I are both making ciders from apples that we grow on orchards that we've been at for close to 2 decades in my case, and over a decade in Eric's case. And so we thought it would be really fun because the ciders are really rooted in these 2 different orchards that are not too far away, but definitely far enough that they have a really different setting, different soils, different characteristics. So
fantastic. Well, listen, I'm going to back off the screen and give you guys full airtime, so I won't take up any of your space, but I'll be right here behind the scenes if you need anything. But you guys enjoy, and I'll be listening in, so take it away.
So what are we going to start with?
Yeah, that's always the fun question, right?
It's a great question.
It's up to you guys. What I mean, in terms of, do you think sparkling makes sense first, or still, or what makes sense here?
Well, is there somewhat of a linear comparison between a few of these ciders? So I think how about the North Star and the Northern Spy? They both have North in their name.
Excellent.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
It sounds great. Right, so this is North Star, right?
Yeah.
I'll be right back. I'm going to grab another glass, which makes sense to me.
All right. Why don't I talk about North Star?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So North Star is 100% from our Reynolds Road orchard, which is where I'm sitting right now. This is Trumansburg, Ulysses Township, off of Perry City Road.
Yep.
1,100 feet elevation. So Cayuga Lake is, I think, 380. So it's quite a ways above Cayuga Lake.
Yeah.
All heirlooms, all North American apples. So we've got Newtown, Pippin, Baldwin, Golden Russet, Keepsake, Liberty, Black Oxford, Arkansas Back, and Roxbury Russet. Unfiltered, unfined, bottled as still.
Okay.
And I guess I'll say a little bit about the Northern Spy. Whoa, this camera's backwards. I can't figure it out. Okay, so we have been making cider with this particular variety, which is a variety that originated in New York State several hundred years ago, ever since we got our license and started making cider. And But this bottling, the 2019, is the first year that we made the Northern Spy cider entirely with Northern Spy apples from our Albee Hill orchard. And so our Albee Hill orchard is, despite what Scott said, actually in the town of Benetton. And it is about 18 miles south of Ithaca. It's also 1,100 feet. Ooh, there we go.
Nice.
It is an east-facing site on a very, very, very steep slope that's sort of in this glacially oversteepened valley of the Cuda Creek. And one cool thing about the apples in here, we kind of created almost like a selection nasal out of different cyans, and so there's two places that they came from. One is the original Northern Spy trees in our partner James's orchard in Newfield, and they're absolutely the original strain. We got them from Geneva, where they're the original strain. But also, we collected cyans from about 150-year-old orchard that exists or existed because it's almost entirely gone here on this farm. And so there's a few trees left. And they're also the original strain. They look very similar, but it's pretty cool because they taste a little different. So anyway, it's kind of a smattering of all of them throughout the block. And this is traditional method. So a secondary fermentation in the bottle, and then it was disgorged.
Okay. And is this from 2018 or 19?
19.
Okay. 19. So same vintage as the North Star.
So for each of you, are these bottles something that you make consistently every vintage? I think I've had these in previous years, but I just want to make sure.
We made the North Star quite a few years ago, but we've skipped a few vintages. So It so happened that 2019 was an excellent harvest.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of the varieties that made it into this cider. So,
okay.
And actually, I can say we're not making it in 2020.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which could be a good segue after we taste into talking about biodynamic and organic orcharding and biennialism.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And Autumn, Northern Spy, this is consistent for you too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, not too, I guess. It is more consistent. What I personally like about the North Star one, it has a nice kind of viscosity to it. Like I think some other types of ciders either get there's a weird kind of layer to them, but this one I think it's almost like milky but skim milky to me in a good way. It's still light but still has a little bit of kind of a creaminess to it too.
Yeah.
I like it's very, very dry. I mean, I'm fine with all types of cider, dry to not dry, but this is to me very, very dry. I'm not sure what the sugar is like on it, but I think it's great.
Yeah, it's 0.0 or at least
so extra dry.
Yeah, but it's really cool, Adrian, to hear you say that because that is like that's what I love about this site. And I can also say that I don't necessarily feel like these varieties lend to that texture and quality.
Yeah.
And I almost want to say it's the farming.
Yeah.
And it's the soil on the site, but as we talk about terroir, I think it's really cool to mention that the farming techniques are, I want to say, as influential as variety and site. You could almost piece those three things into 33% a piece as far as the influence on the final cider.
So how long have you been farming, I guess, these apples that went into this?
So these apples were planted in 2012.
Okay. Very cool.
And just to point out that, Eric, your orchard is certified biodynamic.
Correct. Yeah. That's yeah, so we've farmed biodynamics since the beginning. So we started planting cider trees in 2004, got our license in 2010. It's been this really long process. But we finally got our orchards certified in 2018. And then we just got the processing facility certified in 2019. So these 2019 ciders that have the Demeter stamp are the first that we were able to produce this way, because not only the orchards, but also the processing facility, the cidery, was certified. So, yeah, we're excited about it. And yeah, so as far as the influence on fruit, organic biodynamic, there is definitely a range within those two types of farming methods.
Yeah.
In and of themselves. So you can't just for sure pinpoint one, character of fruit or character quality of the produce to organic or to biodynamic. There's a spectrum in both farming techniques.
So Eric, if you don't mind me asking, how did you originally decide to go biodynamic?
Well, so I worked in the wine industry here in the Finger Lakes, Pennsylvania, and in the Finger Lakes for 10-ish years, and kind of got into biodynamics through that. It was a few conferences I went to. Nicholas Joly, French biodynamic winemaker, grape grower, and then later Hugh Courtney from Josephine Porter Institute in Virginia. So those are kind of two of the people that introduced me to it. But I think within wine and cider, the cool thing is I think that those of us that, and it's the same with organic, I feel like we're focusing on not only nutrient density if you're eating the fruit, but flavor, polyphenol, tannin density, color density. All these things are almost at the sacrifice of economic. You sacrifice the big apple for the small apple.
Yeah.
You sacrifice the diluted flavors, the diluted tannins for the concentrated tannins.
Sure. Yeah.
So again, this is an example of terroir and or the influence of the humans that are involved in the process.
What I like about this North Star one, to me, it's kind of the counter cider. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes I think for kind of the general population, there's a connotation that all cider is sweet because, obviously, same thing with wine, for if it's coming from fruit, etc. And this, to me, considering how dry it is, puts it in a separate category of being kind of the opposite of what people think cider is in a lot of places. But I think that's why I like it personally.
So one thing that I know Eric has probably experienced this also. We for years we've tried to come up with language around trying to describe to people what is the difference between what we're making and what 95% of cider on the market on the shelf is. And when I talk about it, a lot of times what makes sense to me, like in my framework, is that those types of ciders are cider coolers, if you will.
Yeah. Much like wine coolers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think not like trying to brag or talk about how what we do is the best way, but if you're the grower and the producer, you have a very different experience goal than if you purchase and produce. And not that one's better than the other, but it's just really a different mindset, a different way of getting to your goal.
Yeah. Nice. Very cool.
Real quick, we have a question from Joel Thompson. What was the cost of biodynamic certification, if you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So to get the farm and the processing facility certified, it's two different certification processes. And we have two sites. So, we were in a bad place. So we have three different areas that need to be certified. So for us, small operation, the said and done cost was somewhere between $800 and $1,000 annually. And, you know, is that worth it? That's a great question.
Well, it's also a question maybe to put out to our audience. Is it worth it to you?
Yeah.
No. Is it important to you to know to see a certification?
Actually, I'll just comment on that. So far, I don't see an increase in sales based on the fact that we're certified. But what is beautiful about it is that, to me, that stamp is like it's a book of knowledge. It's a book of information that if you're looking for organic or biodynamic foods and you see that stamp and you understand what it means, it means a lot. So it's like a distillation of information into one little tiny symbol on the label, and that so we don't have to communicate anymore, right? You get it, you see it, you got it. So it's kind of like it's like accelerated communication from us.
I also think of in our case for organic certification, and we don't put it on our label. We really ended up deciding to do the certification like just to have a level of accountability. So I know, you know, a lot of people are practicing organic mostly or entirely and don't get certified. And, you know, there's a relationship of trust that you have in talking about your growing practices, but there's also a lot of people who, you know, there's ways to be confused or misled, and the certification to me is just like a bottom line basic level of accountability to say that I jumped through these hoops and you're guaranteed of this bottom line basic thing.
Yeah.
Not that that's like defines exactly what we do, because we do so much more, and it's much more than that.
Yeah.
Autumn, can we jump to your Northern Spy?
Yeah, let's do it.
So traditional method, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Eric, what do you think this one compares most to in terms of what you make?
Well, I think I want to say the North Star, because even though they're very different ciders, there's for sure a transparent fruitiness that I think Northern Spy and a lot of these heirlooms have in common, in the heirlooms that are in the North Star.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, for me, with this Northern Spy, that's like the overarching highlight of its character.
Yeah.
Is transparent fruit. And
I'm getting a lot of citrus out of both of them. So I see that kind of connection as well in these two ciders.
I think for both of them, there's a lot more apparent fruit on the nose just from smelling them. But then when you get into them, they both taste like they are fermented very dry. I'm guessing because they are, obviously. What I like about the Northern Spy one, I think there's a nice bitterness to it. I think a previous one that I had was a lot more kind of like bready and nutty, which I still get a little bit out of this one. But to me, the bitterness is almost like acidity in wine to me, which is a good thing because it provides balance. But I think this one is super approachable because of the balance that I get in it personally. I think anybody that likes, you know, anything dry and sparkling, it's hard not to like this one to me. But
I feel like this cider makes me want just a plate of oysters.
Yeah. No, yeah, it has a very pleasant, I think, like you're saying, like citrus, like ruby red grapefruit in the back of the mouth, soft tannins.
Yeah.
And that is a great balance to that upfront fruit.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Autumn, do you agree that this compares best to North Star, or would you say something else?
You know, so Eric and I just swapped ciders yesterday, and then when we had a bottle of Redbird last night with dinner, we were sort of like, why didn't we do this sooner? Like, I really love Eric ciders, but I have to say, I don't know. So I'm excited to find out as we go through this.
Yeah.
Cool.
I have a question, Adrian, to direct to you from Kendall Wizard, which is, do you view terroir as more of a scientific or emotional concept?
Emotional, wow. I guess if I have to choose between the two, and for this I think I have to, I think I would say scientific. And the reason I say that is because I'm equating science with nature. You can't, you have what you have, right? And to me, the terroir of a place is everything that goes into that place, whether it is the dirt, the precipitation, the sunlight, how you farm it, etc. Everything that goes into that one place on that one hillside or that one plot of land is the nature of it. And to me, that's the science or scientific part of it. So I guess between those two, that would be it for me. I can see how it might be equated with emotion or being emotional, but it's very hard to be able to change, let's say, one hillside of a lake that is different from another hillside of a different lake if they are completely different soils as they are right now. So that's why I would kind of shy away from the emotional part about terroir personally. But what do you guys think?
I think that maybe like another way to frame it, or maybe, you know, like just like a slightly different angle to look at it, and I think maybe it's something I've heard debated, is sort of like, is it objective or subjective?
Yeah.
Like, can you really? And I think sometimes it seems unbelievable to people that you can, and yet, I mean, Adrian, you probably experienced this. Actually, Eric, you probably experienced this too. I mean, if you've sat down with a really good taster who really knows their wine, and see them blind tasting, that's something that gives me a very strong belief that it actually can be objective.
Actually, can be what? Sorry?
Objective. That terroir is like objective. There's an objectivity to it. And yet at the same time, I think that like science itself hasn't been able to 100% figure out, you know, how that can possibly be.
Yeah. I think the hard part is that there are parts that we don't have control over. You know, in the wine space around here, people couldn't control the, you know, floods or mass amounts of rain that certain parts of the region got. You know what I mean? So things like that become out of your control in terms of if something might be flooded out completely. So I think there are parts that are, you know, I can't think of a better way to say it, but just out of everyone's control, unfortunately. But I think if once you really get into it, it takes a while to understand what goes into that place to be able to get this end result, this end product. But that's, you know, that's how I think about it.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I think that the one thing about terroir that's complicated is that there are so many factors, and I think that's kind of what you just said, Adrian.
Yeah,
it's like, you know, we're talking about the soil, the elevation, the rainfall, the aspect of the exposure.
Yep.
That's all the like environmental aspects, but then how you farm it, and then how you treat the fruit once it's picked. Do you sweat it for a day? Do you sweat it for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And then how do you press it? How do you ferment it? How do you age it and bottle it? And then what's the cider maker thinking about through the whole process? You know, are they influenced more or less by the people around them that buy the cider.
Yeah.
So all those things are what I would consider terroir. And so therefore it's like impossible to put that into an accurate scientific experiment.
Yeah.
Because there's too many variables. So
Sure.
I think the cool thing is eventually when you enjoy exploring terroir, at some point you have to just kind of stand back and have an eagle eye view,
Bird's eye view, yeah.
a bird's eye view of the whole region, right? Of
Yeah.
the Finger Lakes Rieslings.
Yeah.
Right. What is that line that carries through?
Yeah.
Even if you get 2 inches of rain this summer or 20 inches of rain this summer, you know?
And that's the question. If someone can have kind of consistency every year to be able to make essentially the same product or the same wine, or in this case, the same cider year in and year out.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's much harder, obviously, to compare two sites, especially when they're very similar, like Autumn's and mine.
Yeah.
But it would be much easier to compare Finger Lakes Riesling and Washington State Riesling as a broad category.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's always fun to compare orchards within the same region too.
Yeah.
And that's something the Finger Lakes has that I think is really special and exciting as, you know, a cider drinker and wine drinker. There's such a sort of diversity of microclimates just right here in this one little region. I think there's a lot to explore on that kind of micro level.
Yeah, definitely. It changes significantly too. What should we move on to next, guys? What do you think is best to either compare from each of yours or taste separately from each of yours?
Well, I think the Fricon Rouge should go last because it's a really rich mouthful of a cider. So
why don't we do the Golden Russet and the Cloud Splitter?
Perfect.
Yeah.
And there's Golden Russet in the Cloud Splitter.
Correct. Yeah.
And now we've got the sparkling still thing swapped.
Right. Okay, so we're starting with the Golden Russet?
Yeah. So Golden Russet, 2019. All the fruit came from our Albee Hill orchard. And this apple is, I don't know, I feel like I've had this love affair with this apple since I was like 19 years old. It's really,
there are worse things, right?
I mean, I am a plant nerd, you know what I mean? So
that's your tagline, plant nerd, love affair with apples.
But it's a beautiful tree. It's got these almost silvery leaves and golden apples. And if you walk through a row of golden russets, you feel like you're almost in a fairy tale. And this is also an apple that, well, its origins are a little bit obscure, but a lot of people believe in the Finger Lakes, actually. And we put a lot of this apple in our blends, in a lot of our blends. But we thought it would be fun to do a single varietal bottling this year. And so you can kind of see the big thing that we sort of go after with Golden Russet, or that we prize in it, is the aromatics.
Nice.
This is what I consider an aromatic apple.
The color on this is absolutely beautiful. I'm a little bit in the shade here, but hopefully you can see that.
It is golden.
Yeah. It's like it's golden, yeah.
To me, like Golden Russets always have that honey.
Right? Oh, honey. Yep.
Yeah, honey. And this one has like I almost want to say like a boozy, like it smells like. I know you didn't do this, but it smells like it was aged in bourbon barrels.
Interesting.
It smells.
There's a little bit of like almost like a caramelized honey or something to it.
Yeah. It smells almost in a good way, like it's fortified with something a little bit. But I like the weight to it. There's like I was talking about the viscosity on the North Star, there's nice texture to it. There's nice weight to it. This one to me kind of sticks around and stays with you for a little while. And I'm not sure if that's typical of golden russet or if it's more a matter of the place or the method, or all. I'm not sure, but to me, that's what I like about it personally.
I think I think that I don't think of golden russet as a particularly tannic apple, but I like the tannin in this particular bottling. I think it's sort of really soft and chalky. And like you say, that, I don't know, to me, that's kind of what I want to have in my mouth when I'm pairing cider with food.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It does leave a chalky texture, which is interesting because when you eat a golden russet apple, I think you get that same sensation
from the skin.
fruit.
Yeah. Yep.
We have a question from Joel Thompson about stemware glasses. And I personally am a big fan of different stemware. I know a lot of people choose not to do that. But I depending on the cider and or the wine, I usually choose the stemware based on that. And for some of these, I'm going with just a universal one right now, but I would actually err on the side of using something with a larger bowl, much like a Burgundy glass or a Pinot glass, for some of these, especially the sparkling ones. And the reason I would do that is just, I think it might be obvious, but just to get the aromatics out of them more, and let them open up a little bit more, get a little bit more air into them, personally. But that's just my personal opinion. I'm kind of a nerd about stemware, so it might just be me, but it's up to, I'm not sure what you guys think.
I definitely agree with you. I mean, just for my own personal preference, and I've heard the thing that, like, you know, if it's good, it'll taste good out of any glass, and that's true.
It tastes better.
That's right. It tastes better out of a better glass. Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I love this. I think this is a
burrito.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think this is like maybe a Pinot Gris or type glass. I love this. So anyway, yeah, you get the aroma.
Yeah.
But I will say, if I'm out working in the orchard or on the tractor, it's in a mason jar.
Yeah. It's hard to bring along a $100, Zalto glass. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Because you're always drinking cider when you're driving your tractor, right?
Only like very small time.
Time to go home, everybody. Time to go home.
Ryan McGiver says biodynamic cider orchards. In regards to biodynamic cider orchards, do both feel that livestock have a place in them? If so, do they add to the terroir? Good question.
Well, I think that to me, the livestock component of biodynamics and of any agricultural system is the building of soil and the encouragement of a healthy soil microbiology. So, in essence, you're adding naturally to the soil, and that I would for sure argue has an effect on the diversity of not only the soil biology but the above ground biology as well. So if you're going to get into the bacterias and the funguses that are present in the orchard, then how you manage your orchard has a big influence on that. And for sure, it influences the character of the apples.
I feel like that's something that we didn't touch on before when we were talking about terroir, but I think is a huge piece of why terroir is not understood by science. And part of that reason is that soil microbiology still isn't really understood by science. Isn't that crazy? 2020. It's like outer space down there.
Yeah.
But the reality is you could have two sites right next to each other on the same hillside with the same exposure and the same elevation and have vastly different soil microbiology, and some of that is very much influenced by the choices that the orchardist makes.
Mm-hmm.
And after having visited, pasture, like traditional pasture-based cider orchards in the UK, I have to say that I can't help but wonder if there is, some little missing element that we don't fully understand about the symbiotic relationship of animals in an orchard. But trees are meant to be apple trees are trees that sort of thrive on the edge of the forest. So they're not completely forest dwelling, and they do like to be, have partially cleared areas and some of that type of ecology.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that too. It's not only the manure and the healthy biodiverse compost, but the way the animal lives and thrives in an orchard, how it eats the plants, what plants it chooses to eat, what plants it leaves behind. It's, when you think about if a sheep is grazing and it's eating the grass, that grass then has a response and it grows differently than if it was never grazed, or it grows differently if it was mowed. So that above ground growth in my mind is mirrored by the below ground growth and the nature of the root system and how that influences the fungal environment, the mycorrhizal connections with the apple trees. Obviously, I'm not going to say that it's the best way, but it's definitely an influence on the overall system.
Yeah. We had a comment earlier that was about science in terroir, but I think what we were talking about earlier was just responding to a question that was answering if it was either science or emotional. And I think we were saying that it's neither one nor the other. It's a matter of a bunch of different things in addition to, essentially. But correct me if I'm wrong, anyone.
So I snuck a taste of the cloud splitter. I'm sorry.
Moving on to cloud splitter.
I snuck a taste of it, and I had this instant. I think if you blind tasted me on this, I think I could tell you it had golden russet in it.
Oh, nice.
We should do that the next one.
Yeah, let's do that.
Blind taste deal on cider and see what comes up.
So okay, go ahead, Autumn.
Well, it's just, we didn't talk about all the range of golden russet, but honey I always taste honey and golden russet. A lot of times I taste melon and stone fruit, and this I really get the melon with.
So Eric, tell us about this one, cloud splitter.
Okay, so this is 2018 cloud splitter. So with cloud splitter, it's always a blend of this certain cast of characters as far as the apple world goes, and it's really kind of the bitter sharp, the aromatic. They sort of certain apples that fit a certain class in my mind, and those are golden russet, Porter's Perfection, Wixon Crab, Harry Masters Jersey, Roxbury russet. There's a whole bunch of them, and so any given year is a little bit different as far as what the orchard gives. But in 2018, we had a lot of golden russets. We had a smaller crop of Porter's Perfection. Oh, Kingston Black's another one that's in here. So it's always that general blend or that general intention to make. And then we try to make a forced carbonated version that we call the vernal cloud splitter. This year we made a still version of cloud splitter, and then what we're tasting right now is the champagne version of the 2018. So it's gone through secondary and was disgorged like a couple weeks ago. And it was bottled in on July 30th of 2019. So it's been in the bottle on the lees for more than a year. Wow. And we love this aging process of the cider on the bottle lees. And I have a library, and I want to continue to build a library of ciders that are on the bottle lees for hopefully at some point decades. So this one is unusually high, a high percentage of golden russet for cloud splitter.
I think there's beautiful texture on this, and I'm just my guess from wine. I'm guessing that is attributed to the time on lees, just the lees in general. But I don't know. I think it changes completely in terms of the aromatics up front. It's kind of musky to me. It's kind of like a marmalade-y thing going on, but it changes significantly once you get into it more. And there's a beautiful texture to it that I think is hard to really attain without doing traditional method. I think that's what I like about this one personally.
And I'll say too, this is the first cider on our flight today that has a influence of European bittersweet, bitter sharp apples. So that musty, I call it beeswax or bittersweet apple, that to me is that very unique character that comes from European bittersweet, bitter sharp apples.
Nice.
We set up this flight really kind of nicely because it's just going to transition into that.
And we totally winged
what you're doing.
We totally winged it. I know. That works really good.
But yeah, I still get that honey right up front.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tropical fruit honey.
I think for anybody that likes any dry sparkling cider, but also the same with wine that really likes texture, this is kind of the way to go for that. Considering the lees and considering that it's also not forced carbonated, but that it is traditional method. But to me, that's what makes it the most unique for this one.
And this is, I would say, it's comparing Eric's ciders and our ciders for texture. These are some of the more heavily textured ciders, orchard-based ciders you'll find, I think. So this is definitely like a...
So it is, I often, from the wine side of things, I attribute texture to a number of different things. But is there anything that you guys do or consider on the farm or in the process that adds to the texture?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things about cider that makes it more challenging to have a really textured beverage is that it's lower in alcohol than wine. So one of the ways that you feel like weight and like significance in your mouth is through the alcohol. Yeah. So already when you're down around in this range, which is 7 to 9, I think of the ciders that we've been trying, 7 to 8.5, you're significantly lower alcohol, and so you don't have that body. And so where does the body come from? I think some of it, for me, I think you can never overcome, let's see, how do I say this? There are things that you can do like aging on the lees that will contribute some texture, but I think you're never going to overcome a poorly grown apple and the wrong choice of variety, right? So like, if you take a commercial dessert variety and age it on the lees, you're still not going to get, a textured cider. And if you take a golden russet, and I mean, golden russet isn't the best example, but to me, so much of it is growing that fruit that Eric talks about, that smaller apple. I mean, that's just sort of a simplistic way of looking at it, but I think of it as density. Mm-hmm. So I think of it not density of sugar, so like dry extract, like let's forget about the sugar for a minute, but what else is in that juice besides water and sugar? Minerals, polyphenolics, acids of different kinds, and how much of it is in there. And I think those are these pieces that come together to leave a texture.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's in a way like those textures are the backbone of the cider. Mm-hmm. And so you can make cider without those textures, but you would do best by attempting a certain style, like not like a dry, complex cider like all these we've tasted today, they need that backbone.
Yeah.
But when you hang beautiful aromas on a solid structure, to me that with low alcohol, to me that's like what's so exciting about cider.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that's really cool, and obviously, so I kind of started my fermentation career in wine. Apples and grapes are totally different. Like it's a totally different plant. It's a vine and a tree. It's palm fruit and it's a cluster of grapes. They're very different in the way they grow, the way they behave, and it totally mirrors the difference in characteristics of flavors.
Mm-hmm.
And apples are really diverse and interesting, and they may not have the power or the for sure the marketing drive, but they might not never have the power of what a wine or a wine grape can produce. But there's this incredible complexity, like we're tasting right now, of tannins and acids and aroma that is so interesting and unique.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So what should we do last year? I think we have maybe 12 minutes or so.
Yeah, so let's do Kingston Black and Fricon Rouge. And
Autumn, did you say you wanted to do the Fricon Rouge last?
Probably.
Okay. So Eric, is it okay to move on to the Kingston Black?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kingston Black. This, I will say, is not released yet. 2019 Kingston Black, Demeter certified.
Okay.
I feel like I should also mention really quickly before you go on that a bunch of the ciders that we're tasting here are limited production ciders. And probably the best way to get your hands on them, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, is by joining our cider clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. We love our cider club.
Definitely.
It's a good way to get super geeky about cider.
Super geeky is the way to go. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So Eric, tell us about this one a little bit. I'm guessing traditional method again.
Traditional method again, 2019 grown. It's actually mostly from our Newtown Road or Burdette site, which is 1,600 feet elevation. Much more rocky, eroded soil. So it's probably more similar to Autumn's Albee Hill orchard, where it's really good for nothing, but maybe great for stock and trying to grow apples. So it's mostly that. It has some Kingston Black from here in Trumansburg too. Like I said, last year, so very young. I bottled this in early January, so just after fermentation, and it's been on the lees since. What else? That's it. I mean, right off the nose, I get that incredible herbaceous. It's like, I mean, Deva and I the other night finally put our fingers on what it is. It's tarragon or maybe even some kind of other. It's very herbaceous. So it's not necessarily fruity. It's earthy. It's herbaceous. The nose is textured, right? It's like you can almost like feel the tannins even before you taste it.
It's almost like a sage thyme type of thing going on to me. And the reason I say it is because it's almost like a little bit soapy, which I'm attributing to the herbs in this case, which I like because it's unique.
You know what, Adrian, when you say soap, what it actually brings up for me is this rose petal lotion that my mother used to have when I was a kid that I would like steal, I wouldn't use it, But I just a little, before I get into the herbs, which I totally get, there's this really floral element to me, which smells like roses.
Yeah, I get that too. So Eric, about this one, so it's Kingston Black from 2 different sites, is that right?
Yeah.
Are those sites different in terms of what you want to get out of them? Is there any reason that you chose those sites for this bottle?
Well, it just so happens that that's where the Kingston Black came from last year.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, someday it would be beautiful to be able to really make a blend based on, you know, Kingston Black from your 15 sites all over the Finger Lakes. You know, how cool would that be?
Yeah.
But it's just where the fruit came from last year. But the site in Burdett is, like I said, you know, marginal soil. The trees are older. They were planted in 2006. These Kingston Blacks are on M7, which, you know, we don't want to get too much into orcharding specifics, but Kingston Black's a vigorous variety. M7's a vigorous rootstock, but on an eroded soil, it's perfect.
Gotcha.
So that's a cool, you know, realization down the road.
And is that because the trees have to essentially work harder?
Yeah.
The trees have to work harder on that soil, and they need, you know, the rootstock can be described as the engine of the tree.
Yeah.
And so if you put a V8 on a Kingston Black, but you have really crappy gasoline, you're going to have a small tree, which is perfect, which is what you want.
Yeah.
So that's what this is.
Okay.
Mostly.
I like this one. To me, has some funkiness in a good way. You know, I think there are a lot of people out there who like sour beers or, you know, natural wines or funky wines. I think for anybody that likes those types of things, something like this would, you know, be in line for them.
Yeah, it's unique because it's a single varietal, which obviously is rare in cider. It's unique because it's from 2 sites in the Finger Lakes. It's all about dynamically grown fruit. That's really cool. It's almost like it is what it is.
Yeah.
It really is. The cider maker, being me, didn't do anything, right? All I did was I just presented it, you know.
Presented in place. That's what we want.
Yeah.
Autumn, is there anything like this in your portfolio of ciders that would compare to this one the most?
Yeah, we try to make a Kingston Black every year.
Okay.
I decided not to line it up because we have very little of it, and we made our version still. Okay. So, you know, that's this whole other layer. But I think that, again, for me as an orchardist, it's so fascinating to like start taking single varietals from other people's orchards because, first of all, and I mean, this is kind of just speaks to how cider as a kind of industry is in its infancy here in the Finger Lakes, you know, but just to be an orchardist and getting your hands on someone else's single varietal cider is like so exciting. It's such a big deal. And I love trying to tease out like the varietal characteristics. So for me in this cider, we get tons of rose in our Kingston Black. And then Eric's tasting note here is wood smoke, and I often, in our Kingston Black, often taste tobacco. Kind of smoky, right?
Yeah.
Something. Yeah. So, and then the other thing is just the structure. As much as the aromatics of a Kingston Black seems like to vary wildly, the structure to me is always the same. It's that just firm. You know, I feel like I'm doing yoga or something. You know what I mean? You really wrap your mouth right around it.
That's good. So let's move on to the last one, if that's okay, guys.
Yeah.
This is, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, I'm sure. Frequent Rouge, is that right?
So it's my understanding, and my French is terrible, obviously, but is that it's Fricon. And that leads us to always be able to make jokes like the Freakin' Rouge.
The Freakin' Rouge. Okay. It's about to get real redneck real quick. Okay.
That's the darkest cider that we've tasted today.
This guy.
And it probably has the most tannins. It's
So-
the one cider we have now that's 100% pure European bittersweet.
And isn't Frequent Rouge? I've tasted it a few times. It's pretty similar to Kingston Black, right? Like it almost looks like it.
It kind of looks like it, but it has very little acidity, very little acidity. So it's sort of like a full French bittersweet. It's not particularly soft, you know. The tannins are very prominent. Hard
tannins.
But just gorgeous bittersweet aromas, and then in my mind, with Fricon Rouge is really associated with warm baking spice. Cloves is a big piece that I think year after year. And you were talking about marginal soils, growing apples on the margins. So I think our soil on our Albee Hill orchard, which is Lordstown, I think I looked this up once, is a sister soil of what you have in Burdett. It's just that our soil is shallower bedrock. So Fricon Rouge is a very vigorous tree, and I've heard some orchardists struggle with that vigor, but it's perfect. It's really successful in our orchard site. And this is a cider. Adrian, you asked, do you make these ciders every year? And I would say with Fricon Rouge, we make it regularly every other year.
Gotcha.
Because the Fricon Rouge tree is a classic example of a biennial cider apple. And so this is sort of like a biological phenomenon that apple trees have coded into their genetics, and some have it more than others. It's kind of like a mast year in a nut tree, but it's a little bit more regular. So in one year, the tree produces an enormous, bountiful crop and kind of uses up the reserves for next year and doesn't have a crop. And I think there's a theory behind it that says you go this on year and this off year, because in the off year, you starve out all of the insect pests that would be attacking the tree. Why else would the tree be so allocate its resources in that way? Like it doesn't. That's one explanation that the human mind can have.
This almost looks like an orange wine or a rosé to me in terms of wine comparison. Mm-hmm. What I love about this to me, it smells like fall in a bottle, or like between like fall up until Thanksgiving. Like it smells like somebody is making mulled apple cider in a kitchen, and you're about to go into that kitchen.
Yeah, or if you like leaves that are partially decomposed in the woods in late October.
Yeah,
with that.
This is upstate New York in a bottle.
Rooibos, right? Rooibos.
Yeah.
So skip your pumpkin flavored beverage. You can just go all natural here.
No PSLs here. Yeah.
I want to make sure I say something here real quick. So of the Eve ciders that we tasted, there's 3. They're all from 2019. So I just want to mention this similarity, and it could very well be the vintage, or it could be the beginnings of understanding the terroir. So to me, all of the ciders have what I almost want to say tastes like somebody steeped a bag of spices in all 3 of those ciders. And that's like cinnamon stick, clove, there's that spiciness, right?
Yeah.
And all 3 of the ciders, despite the fact that they're different apples. So that's really cool. And I think as we explore terroir, if we can continue to see that character through multiple vintages over multiple varieties, that's when we can really call it terroir.
Yeah, it's true. Beautiful.
What a fun project.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all. Eric, I'm using what you just said as a fantastic segue to sort of wrap this up. I feel like we could go on for a very long time. We just have additional programming that we have coming up this afternoon that we have to get to, but this has been really phenomenal, and I love this sort of development and construction of this idea of terroir around cider. I think it's phenomenal and it's special, and I think it's especially exciting to be at a place where there's a lot of nuance to it, right? And we're sort of crafting it and finding it, developing it as we go, which I think is extremely exciting. And I love the idea of the blind tasting, Autumn. I think that would be really cool. I think you mentioned doing some sort of interesting blind tasting with you all. That would be very cool.
What do you think, Adrian, next year?
I mean, I'll do it. I'll get them wrong, but I'll do it. Yeah.
Why do we have to wait a year?
What are you doing next week, right?
Exactly. So before I wrap up, any final closing thoughts or comments?
Well, I just wanted to say, everybody be sure to follow Adrian on Instagram if you're interested in Finger Lakes terroir. He probably has one of the most extensive Finger Lakes wine reviews with cider smattered in there, hopefully more in the future. And that's at wino_dino, right? Is that right?
Correct.
On Instagram. And then also to just make the salesy pitch that both Redbird, Orchard Cider, and Eve Cidery have cider clubs that you can join, and where you can get some of these more like intellectual and esoteric ciders and do this kind of exploration yourself, because that's really, like, I think one of the most exciting things about cider is like, this is happening now, you know, and we can get involved in it and start kind of collectively understanding terroir and cider.
Absolutely.
Agreed. Autumn and Eric, thank you so much for sharing your ciders. And Adrian, thank you so much for your perspective. It was fantastic. This was an awesome conversation. I am very serious about having many, many more of them. So we got to figure that out for sure. So I'm excited to start the weekend. This was a perfect kickoff. Cheers to you guys.
Thank you all for joining too.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Cider Week Finger Lakes is brought to you by the New York Cider Association and is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors.